Welcome back, survivors. I'm glad you could join us tonight. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like to help boost the signal. And as always, drop a comment with your city or country. I love seeing where you're all listening from. The sirens had been screaming for 3 days straight, a constant wail rising and falling across the city, broken only by bursts of gunfire and the crack of explosions in the distance. They had been background noise at first, something we tuned out while answering calls, but when they stopped all at once, the silence hit harder than the sound ever had. The city outside the precinct died in that silence. I stood at the front desk of the 14th precinct, watching the civilians pressed against the glass, faces pale, eyes wild, fists pounding for shelter. We had locked the doors at midnight, the last radio message telling us to hold position and expect evacuation. Evacuation never came. Inside, a skeleton crew worked in shifts, 5 officers left from 20. Our rookie sat by the radio, whispering into the mic though no one answered. Captain Alvarez paced the lobby like a caged lion, his hand never far from his sidearm. The others leaned against walls, exhaustion written across their faces, sweat streaked through grime. The vending machines were empty, coffee pot long cold. And then there were the prisoners. 3 men locked in the holding cells, picked up days before the world collapsed. One was a brawler named Kincaid, built like a tank, arms covered in ink. One was a jittery car thief, twitching every few seconds like his nerves were alive with sparks. The third sat silent in the corner of his cell, a quiet man with sharp eyes, never giving a name. They had food trays slid through bars, barely touched. They had watched us crumble through steel, calm and patient as if time was on their side. The civilians outside grew louder. Families, shopkeepers, strangers dragged in from the street, all begging for safety. The glass rattled under their fists. Captain Alvarez finally cursed, ordered me to let a handful in. We opened the door just wide enough, pulled them through, slammed it shut against the surge that followed. Screams broke out outside as the crowd turned on itself, fighting for a spot they would never get. Inside, the ones we admitted collapsed on the floor, sobbing, thanking us, clutching their children. They looked around precinct lobby, at our thin defenses, at the barred cells, at the rifles stacked by the desk. Relief faded into fear. Night fell. We boarded the windows, set sandbags at doors, stationed 1 man on the roof with the last working rifle scope. The city beyond was smoke and fire, shadows moving between cars, sometimes shambling, sometimes sprinting. The moans echoed against brick and glass, carried in waves like wind. We sat in the briefing room under dim lights, civilians crammed into corners, children crying soft, grown men whispering about food. Captain Alvarez laid it out. We had 6 shotguns, a few pistols, 1 box of riot gear. Enough for 1 night, maybe 2. The generator ran off a tank of fuel in the basement, 3 days at best. Radio silent. City gone. No rescue. We were the last island of order in ocean of chaos. The rookie asked about releasing the prisoners to help. Alvarez snapped at him, said law still meant something. He said letting criminals loose would tear us apart faster than the dead. The silent man in the cell only smiled when he heard that. His eyes caught mine cold, knowing like he already saw what was coming. By midnight we heard the first real test. 12 of them came out of the smoke, pounding fists on the glass, smearing blood across it, jaws snapping. Their bodies were torn, clothes ripped, eyes cloudy, but their hunger was sharp. Civilians screamed, children pulled away from windows. The prisoners stood, watching through bars, smiling. We opened fire through the slits and barricades, muzzle flashes lighting the night. Glass shattered, blood sprayed, bodies fell. But they kept coming until heads burst or spines broke. When it ended, the lobby reeked of gunpowder and rot. We had burned half our ammo. The civilians clung to each other, whispering prayers. I stood at the desk again, pipe and shotgun at my side, looking out through cracked glass. The sirens had gone quiet. The city had gone quiet. Only moans remained, carried on wind that smelled of fire and death. And in that silence, I realized something deeper. The law had walked out with the last evacuation chopper. What we had inside this precinct now was not justice, not order. It was survival. And survival meant choosing who lived and who didn't. Behind me the prisoners whispered in low voices. Behind me the civilians argued over rations. Behind me Alvarez muttered about duty. And in front of me, through broken glass, shadows gathered again. The sirens had faded. The war was only beginning. Morning brought no relief, only smoke hanging low over the city, orange light flickering from buildings still burning. We had survived one night, but the cost was clear. Half our ammo spent, nerves frayed, civilians whispering like rats trapped in a sinking ship. The precinct was never built to be fortress, but we made it one anyway. Captain Alvarez barked orders as if his voice alone could hold walls together. We stacked filing cabinets against doors, dragged desks into barricades, welded shut side entrances with tools from maintenance room. The rookie hauled riot shields to lobby, stacking them like wall of plastic and steel. I climbed to roof, sandbags piled into crude nest where Officer Daniels scanned streets with rifle scope. The city below looked like battlefield, cars abandoned at odd angles, black smoke spiraling from collapsed overpass, shapes moving in packs along avenues. Inside precinct the civilians huddled, 30 souls packed tight into briefing room and hallways. Some clutched family photos, some weapons scavenged from streets, some nothing at all. Their eyes followed us every time we walked past, suspicion and fear mixing with desperate hope. They wanted safety, but safety was running thin. And then there were the prisoners. Kincaid, the brawler, did push-ups in his cell, muscles straining, sweat dripping, as if walls meant nothing. The car thief paced like caged animal, muttering about deals and money like world hadn't ended. The quiet one still sat calm, sharp eyes tracking every move. When Alvarez passed, he whispered loud enough for me to hear, "You'll run out of food before bullets." His voice was smooth, steady like prophecy. We rationed supplies. Crackers and canned beans passed around in paper bowls. Arguments sparked quick, civilians accusing cops of holding back, cops snapping that order had to be kept. Alvarez slammed fist on table, declared law still ruled here. Some nodded, some scoffed. At noon a fight broke out. 2 men grappled in hallway over water jug, one claiming it for his sick wife, the other for his kids. Shouts turned to fists, fists to blood. Civilians screamed, children cried. I waded in with baton, cracking one across ribs, shoving the other to floor. They looked up at me with hate, not gratitude. Alvarez shouted order again, but it was my baton that made them stop. Law by word was crumbling. Law by force still held. Later, moans rose outside again. This time more than a dozen. Maybe 50. They gathered at fence line, stumbling into each other, slamming against cars we had rolled into barricades. Daniels fired from roof, picking heads one by one, but for every corpse that fell 2 more appeared. Their voices merged into chorus that shook glass. Inside the civilians panicked. Some pressed against back doors, begging to run. Others clutched children tighter. One woman fainted. The prisoners banged bars, laughing, shouting insults. You locked us in with sheep, now wolves come knocking. I stood at front line with riot shield braced, shotgun across chest. Alvarez ordered civilians back. Rookie beside me trembled, sweat pouring down his face, knuckles white on pistol grip. When first corpse smashed against glass I shoved back with shield, bone and flesh grinding against polycarbonate. Daniels fired overhead, skull bursting, blood spraying lobby. More followed, pounding, clawing, smearing red across barricades. For an hour we held them. Every shot, every swing of baton, every shield slam burned strength out of us. Civilians wailed, children screamed, prisoners howled like crowd at gladiator fight. Then at last, silence. The dead pulled back, drifting down street. Bodies piled outside like wall of meat, flies already buzzing. The civilians slumped, relief mixing with despair. Rookie wiped sweat from brow, whispering we couldn't keep this up. Alvarez barked that we would hold precinct until army returned. His voice cracked, but none dared challenge him. That night I walked cells, prisoners watching me close. Kincaid leaned against bars, muscles glistening, grinning like man already free. The car thief begged for release, promised he could help. The quiet one only spoke one line. Sheep always fear wolves, but sometimes it takes wolves to guard flock. His eyes locked on mine, daring me to consider. Back in briefing room, civilians muttered about food, water, safety. Rookie asked me soft if we were protecting them, or just delaying end. Alvarez polished badge like it meant something still. I looked at walls, at boarded windows, at doors chained shut. Fortress of Blue, they called it once. Now it was coffin dressed in uniforms. The sirens had faded. Order was fading next. Morning brought a gray sky, clouds heavy with smoke drifting from fires across city blocks. The air smelled of ash and gasoline. Every breath tasted like end of the world. The precinct creaked under its new weight as fortress. Barricades leaned at odd angles, glass cracked like spiderwebs, plywood nailed over doors that once welcomed citizens now sealing them in. The civilians stirred restlessly. Parents whispered to children, trying to keep them quiet. Hungry eyes darted to vending machine we had already stripped bare. Tension was rope stretched to breaking. Then it snapped. It started with a father named Morgan, his face gaunt, beard ragged, clutching a bag he'd dragged in first night. Another man, Ramirez, spotted him opening it in corner, pulling out canned fruit. Ramirez accused him loud, claimed Morgan had hidden supplies from all of us. Voices rose, shouts filling briefing room. Civilians surged toward them, desperate hands reaching for food. Children cried, shoved aside in crush. I waded in with baton, shoving bodies apart. Morgan clutched his can-like weapon. Ramirez swung fist. I cracked him across ribs. He gasped, doubled over, but civilians kept shouting. They demanded justice. They demanded food. Alvarez stormed in, pistol raised, shouting law still ruled here. For a moment his voice cowed them, but eyes lingered on pistol, not badge. They weren't listening to law anymore, only power. We divided can under Alvarez's order, spoonfuls to children first, then others. Morgan sat bleeding in corner, eyes wild with hate. Ramirez spat blood, glaring. No one was satisfied. The food only reminded them how little remained. The prisoners had watched everything. Kincaid laughed deep, slamming fist against bars, shouting we were softer than soap. Car thief jeered that we'd be torn apart before week's end. The quiet one smiled thin, saying nothing, but his eyes told me he'd seen this before. He wasn't laughing at us, he was measuring us like cattle. By noon trouble doubled. Rookie was assigned guard duty at intake door. A woman banged outside, screaming she'd been chased, begging for entry. Rookie hesitated, heart torn. Against Alvarez's standing order, he cracked door open. She stumbled inside, covered in scratches, clutching side. She sobbed thanks, then collapsed. Civilians rushed to her, offering water, patting her back. Rookie helped lift her into chair. She shook, crying about her husband torn apart in street. She begged for safety. Alvarez stared hard, demanded she show wound. She hesitated. That hesitation said all. When sleeve was pulled back, the bite was clear. Flesh torn, black lines already creeping. Civilians gasped. Some backed away. Others begged us to save her. She screamed she wasn't infected, that it was scratched from fence. Rookie argued too, begged Alvarez to show mercy. Alvarez drew pistol slow. The room broke into chaos. Half the civilians shouted for her death. Half shouted for her life. Rookie blocked Alvarez, trembling, shouting law didn't allow executions without trial. Alvarez roared that law meant keeping rest alive. The woman collapsed, seizing, blood-frothing lips. Seconds later she rose with shriek. Civilians screamed, chairs toppled, bodies trampled in rush. Rookie froze. Alvarez fired twice into her skull. Silence followed, silence broken only by sobs. First blood inside Precinct had been spilled. Afterward the civilians looked at us with new eyes. Not protectors, not peacekeepers, executioners. The badge had lost shine. That night whispers filled rooms. Civilians muttered that cops hoarded too much food, too many weapons. Some said prisoners might be safer bet, at least they were honest wolves. Rookie sat alone, hands trembling, whispering prayers. Alvarez paced, muttering duty over and over. I sat by cells, pipe across knees. Kincaid smirked, eyes sharp. Car thief taunted me, saying I'd be next target when civilians turned. The quiet one finally spoke, voice calm, steady. Sheep fight each other when wolves at gate. He leaned closer to bars. You'll need us before long. I said nothing, but his words burrowed. The law was bleeding. Order cracked, and every shadow inside Precinct felt closer than the dead outside. The day after the woman turned, the Precinct felt like tomb. No one trusted anyone, not the cops, not the civilians, not even themselves. The smell of her blood still clung to the floorboards. We scrubbed it until the wood splintered, but the stain refused to fade. Captain Alvarez tried to rally them. He stood in briefing room, chest out, badge polished though it meant nothing now. He barked that rations would be distributed fairly, that weapons would remain under police control, that order still stood. His words fell like bricks into ocean. The civilians weren't listening. Their eyes shifted toward the locked cabinet where shotguns sat. Their stomachs growled louder than his orders. The rookie tried backing him, voice cracking as he spoke about law and protection. Some of the civilians nodded, grateful for any scrap of hope. Others scoffed. One man shouted that cops had no right to keep weapons from people fighting for their children. Another woman demanded to see food stores. Alvarez refused. Voices rose, shouting filled room, fists slammed tables. That's when I drew line. I stepped forward, pipe across my shoulder, and told them straight. Weapons stay locked. Food is measured and shared. Anyone tries to take more than their share, they answer to me. Silence followed, heavy, thick, broken only by whispers. Some nodded, some glared, but none challenged. Not yet. Behind us the prisoners banged bars. Kincaid grinned wide, voice like thunder. You're wasting your time, he shouted. These sheep don't respect rules, only teeth. Car thief laughed high, twitchy, adding that sooner or later they'd slit our throats for crumbs. The quiet one just stared, eyes glinting. He didn't need to speak. His gaze said enough. He was watching cracks widen. Afternoon came with pounding at barricades. Horde again, heavier this time, 50, maybe more. They slammed into cars we'd rolled against front entrance, moaning, clawing, shaking building to its bones. Daniels fired from roof, dropping them one by one, but for each that fell two more pressed forward. The lobby shook with fists hammering glass, boards creaking like ribs ready to snap. Inside the civilians panicked. Some prayed, some screamed, some demanded guns. Alvarez roared at them to shut up, pistol waving. Rookie stood frozen, pale, whispering that we couldn't hold much longer. I pressed shield against door as moans thundered outside, shotgun steady in other hand. The barricade bowed with weight of bodies. Civilians wailed louder. The prisoners shouted encouragement, mocking, laughing at every thud against glass. We held them back, bullet by bullet, swing by swing. Glass cracked but didn't shatter. At last the horde drifted away, drawn by some noise deeper in city. Silence came again. But silence wasn't peace. It was pressure building in every chest. That night Alvarez called council in briefing room. Civilians demanded seats at table. Some shouted they deserved weapons, that cops couldn't protect them forever. Alvarez stood tall, refusing. Rookie fidgeted, glancing between sides, torn. I leaned in, laying pipe across table. I told them plain. You want guns? You fight for barricades. You want food? You share burden. Law isn't papers anymore, it's survival. The room split in two. Half agreed, half refused. Lines were drawn, invisible but sharp. After meeting I walked cell block. Kincaid leaned against bars, arms crossed, smirking. He said we were fools, that sheep would turn on us before dawn. Car thief muttered promises if I'd let him out. The quiet one finally spoke again, voice steady, almost kind. The law you cling to, it's dead. All you've got left is control. And control breaks fast. His eyes locked on mine. When it breaks, remember us. I said nothing, but his words hung heavy. Later I found Rookie sitting alone, head in hands. He whispered he didn't know who to trust, the captain, the civilians, even me. He asked if law still mattered. I wanted to tell him yes, but the truth clawed inside me. Law had faded with sirens. Now there were only lines we drew ourselves, and whether we were strong enough to keep them. Through cracked window I saw shadows gathering again down street. More would come, always more. And inside, our fortress was splitting at seams. Lines in the sand. Tomorrow someone would cross them. The sound started at dawn, low groaning mixed with thudding fists against steel. By sunrise it grew into roar, a wall of sound pressing against every window. The horde had returned, larger than before, their shadows stretching across street as far as I could see. Daniels called down from roof, panic in his voice. Hundreds. Not dozens, hundreds. We scrambled into positions. Riot shields lined across lobby, barrels aimed through gaps in barricades. Civilians huddled in corners, some clutching pipes and broom handles, others praying, all terrified. Prisoners shouted over the noise, banging their bars like drums. Kincaid laughed. The car thief begged release. The quiet one only stared at me, calm as stone. The first impact shattered glass we had patched the night before. Hands clawed through splinters, teeth snapping. We fired. Shotgun blasts shook walls. Pistols cracked. Daniels on roof picked targets with precision. The dead collapsed in heaps, tripping others behind them. But they pressed harder, climbing, crawling, filling lobby with their stink. Alvarez barked orders, voice raw. Hold the line. Don't let them breach. His words carried force, but fear slipped through his eyes. Rookie stood next to me, hands trembling on pistol, face pale but determined. I shoved a riot shield into his grip, told him to brace. The barricade groaned. Boards splintered. One corpse smashed headlong into shield wall, shattering its own skull but forcing us back step by step. Another clawed over top, teeth snapping inches from my face. I slammed pipe across its temple, blood spraying across floor. More followed. Civilians screamed. One man bolted for back hallway. Alvarez swung pistol, ordering him to stay. But fear was stronger than words. The man shoved past, tearing at locked exit, screaming for freedom. A corpse crashed through barricade beside him, jaws snapping into his neck. Blood sprayed across wall. The scream turned to gurgle, then silence. Civilians shrieked louder. The breach widened. Dead poured through broken gap like flood. Lobby became killing ground. We fired, we swung, we shoved back with shields. Blood sprayed across tile, bodies piled knee-high. Rookie fell to one knee, a corpse clawing at his chest. I smashed pipe into skull, dragged him up. He looked at me wide-eyed, muttered thanks, then fired wild at next one. Kincaid roared from cell, slamming bars, shouting he could kill 10 for every one of ours if we let him out. Car thief echoed him, shrieking promises. Civilians glanced back at cells, desperate eyes shifting. Some shouted we should open them. Alvarez screamed no, that law still held. But his words drowned under moans and gunfire. We pushed harder. Daniels dropped from roof into lobby, rifle empty, switching to baton. Blood streaked his face. Alvarez reloaded, one of last magazines, firing into horde. Rookie screamed as corpse bit into his arm guard. I tore it free, cracked skull with shield edge. But the flood didn't stop. Bodies surged over counters, crawled through windows, poured in through front like tide. We fell back step by step into hallway, dragging civilians with us. Alvarez shouted to seal lobby, to abandon ground. I slammed barricade behind us with Rookie, cutting off flood for moment. Breathing hard, I looked back. Lobby was sea of dead, writhing, clawing, pounding at barricade we had just raised. The noise was deafening. Civilians sobbed, clutching each other. Alvarez wiped blood from cheek, muttering we had held, but would not again. The prisoners laughed. Their voices carried down hallway mocking. You see now, the quiet one said at last, voice calm even over chaos. Order cannot hold wall of teeth. You'll need wolves to fight wolves. His eyes locked on mine. Civilians muttered agreement, fear twisting their words. Some shouted we should arm the prisoners. Alvarez barked back, roaring that law forbade it. Rookie looked at me torn, sweat dripping, lips trembling. His eyes begged for answer. I stared at barricade buckling under pounding fists. Looked at civilians' pale faces. Looked at prisoners, eager, disciplined in their own way. The gate had been breached. We had patched it for now. But next wave would come. Lines we had drawn in sand were gone. Only choices remained, choices between law and survival, between control and chaos. And when next attack came, there would be no barricade strong enough. The barricade groaned all night, fists pounding against steel and wood, moans echoing down hallways like thunder in storm drains. None of us slept. We sat in briefing room under flickering lights, civilians huddled together, whispering and glaring, officers cleaning weapons with hands that shook. The air stank of sweat and cordite, fear clinging to every wall. Alvarez tried to keep his command voice steady. He laid map across table, pointing at supply lockers, fuel reserves, exit routes. His words rattled like bullets in empty chamber. No one trusted him anymore. Civilians muttered openly that his orders were killing them, that he cared more about rules than lives. Rookie shifted in chair, eyes darting between sides, sweat dripping down his temple. He wanted to believe in law, but law was bleeding out in front of him. Then the food fight broke. A woman named Keller stood, clutching her son, demanding rations be handed directly to families instead of filtered through police. Another man shouted back that it wasn't fair, that single people deserved equal shares. Voices rose into shouts. Fists slammed tables. Keller lunged at cabinet where rations were stored. Rookie tried to stop her, but she shoved past. Alvarez drew pistol, barking order. She froze, staring at barrel aimed at her head. That silence broke something deeper than barricades. Civilians screamed at Alvarez, accusing him of tyranny. He shouted back, veins bulging, insisting law still ruled. The prisoners laughed from cells, voices dripping poison. Kincaid roared that even wolves treated pack better. The car thief howled that sheep were tearing shepherds apart. The quiet one simply said, "Order is fragile as glass." Then it happened. Rookie lost nerve. A corpse had grabbed him in lobby yesterday, and almost tore his throat out. That memory haunted his eyes now. He lowered his pistol, whispering that Alvarez was wrong, that people had right to food. Civilians cheered his words. Alvarez slapped him across face, roaring he was insubordinate. Rookie staggered back, shame and fury boiling. That crack split wider when alarms screamed from upstairs. Daniels shouted from roof, movement on street. We scrambled to barricades. Through broken glass we saw them, not dead but living. A gang of looters, armed with pipes and pistols, circling Precinct like vultures. They saw bodies piled at entrance, and knew survivors were inside. Their leader raised shotgun and fired into air, laughing. Alvarez ordered shots fired in warning. Civilians begged us not to waste ammo. Rookie looked at me, torn. My pipe felt heavier than ever. The looters made first move, hurling Molotovs against barricade. Fire licked plywood, smoke filled lobby. Civilians screamed, dragging children deeper inside. We scrambled with extinguishers, dousing flames while Daniels picked them off one by one from roof. Still they pressed, howling for blood, for weapons, for food. Amid smoke and fire, I heard it, the prisoners. Kincaid bellowed for release, promising to tear looters apart barehanded. Car thief cried he knew back alleys, could flank them if freed. The quiet one said nothing, but his gaze locked on me, calm, patient, certain. We fought them off with last rounds of ammo, fire finally dying down. Looters fled into smoke, leaving bodies behind. We had survived again, barely. But when smoke cleared, chaos was worse inside than out. Civilians shouted we couldn't keep fighting alone. Some demanded prisoners be freed. Rookie shook, whispering maybe they were right. Alvarez roared back, veins bulging, threatening to shoot anyone who touched keys. Order cracked then. No one listened to rank, no one respected badge. Civilians whispered rebellion. Rookie doubted command. Even Daniels muttered that Captain was driving us into grave. That night I walked cell block again. Kincaid leaned against bars, face split by grin. He growled that sheep were turning on shepherds, that my baton couldn't hold them forever. Car thief begged, voice shrill, offering loyalty if I opened lock. The quiet one finally spoke, calm and steady. You know it, he said. You saw it in their eyes. They don't believe in your law, but they believe in survival. Choose wrong side, and you'll die with your badge. Choose right side, and maybe you'll live long enough to matter. I stared at him long, words clawing inside me. Law had been my shield, my weapon, my reason. But what was law now? Just rules written for a world that no longer existed. Outside the barricade groaned again. Inside civilians muttered louder. Rookie avoided my eyes. Alvarez polished badge like it still meant something. And me, I sat with pipe across my knees, staring into dark. Order was gone. All that remained was survival. By morning, the precinct was quiet in a way that made my skin crawl. No moans outside, no pounding fists on barricades, only whispers in corners and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. That kind of silence never lasts. It's the breath before the scream. It started with rations. Alvarez had locked them in evidence room, insisting on strict distribution. But during night someone broke padlock with crowbar. Half the supplies were gone. We found empty wrappers stuffed in trash can, crumbs leading down hall. Civilians swore innocence, but eyes darted away when I pressed them. Rookie muttered maybe the lock broke on its own, but his voice shook. Alvarez snapped. He lined civilians against wall, pistol drawn, barking demands. He accused Keller, the mother who had fought for food before. She screamed back, swearing she hadn't touched it. Others shouted Alvarez was tyrant, worse than the looters. his face purpled with rage. He shoved Keller against wall, muzzle pressed to her forehead. Her son screamed. The room fractured. Half the civilians begged Alvarez to stop. The other half shouted for his blood. Rookie stepped in front of him, shaking, gun in hand but pointed down. "This isn't justice," he whispered, though his voice cracked. Alvarez roared that justice was whatever he said it was. He raised pistol higher. Keller sobbed, eyes clenched tight. I moved before thought. Pipe slammed into wall beside Alvarez's head. He froze, eyes cutting to me. For a moment all sound vanished. Civilians stared wide-eyed. Rookie trembled. Alvarez's hand shook on trigger. He lowered pistol slow, muttering about betrayal. He stalked away, slamming door so hard glass rattled. But damage was done. That night whispers filled halls. Civilians muttered that Alvarez had lost mind. Rookie sat with me in armory, hands buried in hair, whispering he didn't know who to follow anymore. His eyes begged for truth I didn't have. Prisoners laughed when they heard. Kincaid shouted that our captain was tyrant and tyrants fell first. Car thief cackled that civilians would slit his throat in sleep. The quiet one leaned close to Barr's, voice calm. Law is gone. All you've got left is trust. And trust is already broken. His eyes locked on me. So what do you choose, badge or blood? Before I could answer, chaos erupted. Shouts tore through halls. We rushed to lobby. 2 civilians had broken into weapon locker, pistols clutched in shaking hands. They screamed they wouldn't be left defenseless anymore. Alvarez burst in, gun raised, face twisted with fury. He shouted they were under arrest, but laughter followed his words. Arrest? In this world. The men fired first, bullets punching into wall. Civilians screamed, diving for cover. Rookie shouted for them to stop, his gun trembling in both hands. Alvarez roared, firing back, clipping one in shoulder. Blood sprayed across tiles. Panic exploded. Civilians charged in frenzy, fists swinging, chairs smashed, voices rising into storm. I waded in with pipe, cracking skulls, not to kill, just to scatter. Rookie froze in middle, caught between both sides. Alvarez bellowed for order, pistol barking, but every shot only added fuel. Then one of the armed civilians turned gun on Alvarez. Rookie shouted warning. Alvarez ducked, fired back. The man dropped, chest bursting red. Silence followed, thick and choking. Civilians screamed murder. Keller sobbed over body. Alvarez stood trembling, gun smoking. Law still rules here, he growled. But his voice carried no weight. That night civilians barricaded themselves in briefing room, refusing to leave. Alvarez locked himself in office, muttering to walls. Rookie wandered aimless, eyes hollow. Daniel sat on roof, staring at horizon, rifle across lap, but no strength left in him. And me, I sat by cells. Kincaid grinned, knuckles white on bars. Car thief whispered promises, begging release. The quiet one leaned forward, gaze steady. Now you see. Civilians will tear themselves apart. Your captain has lost them. Your rookie has lost faith. Only choice left is us. He tapped Bars with finger. Let us out, and we fight with you. Keep us in, and you'll die alone. For first time, his words didn't sound like threat. They sounded like truth. Through cracked window I heard it again. The moans, faint but growing. Horde returning. Bigger than before. Barricades wouldn't hold this time. And inside, our people were already at war with each other. Betrayal within. Death without. The line was gone. The moans began as whisper on wind, faint, like storm brewing far off. By dawn they were chorus shaking the precinct walls, endless voices calling hunger in unison. Shadows filled streets outside, bodies pressing shoulder to shoulder, eyes blank, jaws gnashing. It was not a horde anymore. It was tide. Daniel shouted from roof, his voice ragged. Thousands. Not hundreds. Thousands. We scrambled. Barricades reinforced with desks, filing cabinets, anything with weight. Riot shields lined up in hallway. Guns loaded with what little ammo remained, barely 2 magazines each. Civilians huddled in corners, their whispers now screams, their arguments forgotten. Fear united them where reason had failed. Alvarez emerged from office, eyes bloodshot, pistol in hand. His voice cracked but still carried command. He barked orders, demanded formation, swore we would hold. Civilians looked at him like drowning men at broken rope. Rookie glanced my way, his eyes begging for direction. I gave none. My pipe rested across my shoulder. The choice was theirs. Then impact shook building. Windows shattered, boards splintered, glass rained across lobby. Moans roared like ocean wave. Dead poured against front barricade, slamming, clawing, climbing over each other. Metal groaned, wood cracked. Daniels fired from roof, rounds popping skulls, bodies tumbling, but wave replaced wave. One corpse forced its way through shattered window, teeth snapping. Alvarez fired, blasting head into spray. Another forced through, then 2, then 10. Lobby filled with gunfire, screams, blood. I shoved riot shield forward, pipe swinging in arcs. Skull cracked like melon, blood painting walls. Rookie fought beside me, pistol barking, eyes wide with terror. Civilians grabbed chairs, broom handles, anything to swing. The dead kept coming. The barricade buckled. Then it broke. They flooded in. Dozens at once, then hundreds pressing behind. The lobby became slaughterhouse. Civilians shrieked as teeth tore into flesh. One man was dragged down, throat ripped open, blood spraying. A woman fell beneath pile, her screams cut short. Children cried until silence swallowed them. Rookie screamed for retreat. Alvarez roared to hold line. Daniels fell from roof into chaos, rifle empty, swinging baton until they tore him apart. We fell back, step by step, blood slicked beneath our boots. I swung pipe until arms burned, shield dented under weight. Rookie fired last rounds, then threw pistol, smashing skull with butt. Alvarez's voice cracked into madness, ordering civilians to fight, screaming law was still alive. They ignored him, fleeing down hallways, only to be dragged into tide. We reached corridor where cells lined wall. The prisoners watched storm pour past broken barricade. Kincaid roared, fists pounding bars, demanding release. Car thief screamed, tears streaking his face, promising loyalty. The quiet one stood still, hands on bars, eyes locked on mine. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His gaze held truth. This was it. Without them, we were finished. Rookie shouted for keys. Alvarez bellowed never, aiming pistol at me. Civilians screamed behind us as tide surged closer. The hallway shook with their approach, the air thick with rot and blood. I looked at Alvarez, his hand shaking, his badge glinting in dim light. I looked at Rookie, young, terrified, desperate. I looked at prisoners, wolves waiting in cage. Then I heard crash of barricades splitting behind us, moans surging closer. The law was gone. Survival was all that remained. I yanked keys from Alvarez's belt. He shouted, lunging at me. I shoved him back with shield, pipe raised. His pistol wavered, then dropped, eyes wide with betrayal. I turned, unlocked cells. Kincaid burst free with roar, grabbing iron stool, swinging like warhammer. Car thief darted out, scrambling for dropped pistol. The quiet one stepped calm, picked pipe from floor, nodding once in thanks. Together we faced storm. The dead poured into corridor, jaws snapping, arms reaching. Kincaid smashed skulls in arcs, blood spraying walls. Car thief fired wild, rounds ripping heads apart. Rookie swung baton, eyes wild but steady. Alvarez screamed fury, firing into tide, still clinging to law even as world burned. The quiet one fought beside me, pipe striking clean, efficient, every blow deliberate. His eyes never wavered. Wolves had been unleashed. Corridor filled with screams, ours and theirs. Bodies piled waist high, blood slick, walls painted red. Every second we held meant another breath stolen from storm. But still they came. Endless. Relentless. At last Alvarez fell, dragged down by tide, badge glinting as teeth tore him apart. Rookie screamed his name, but no one could save him. The law died in that moment, buried under claws and teeth. We fought on, step by step, every swing slower, every breath ragged. Civilians fled through back, their screams fading into night. Storm of teeth raged around us. The precinct was no fortress now. It was tomb, and we wolves and sheep alike were fighting for last breath inside it. The corridor was drowning in bodies. Moans thundered through concrete. Blood ran in rivers between our boots. My arms ached with every swing, pipe bent and slick with gore. Rookie's face was streaked with blood and sweat, his baton broken down to splintered stick. Kincaid laughed as he smashed skulls, voice rising over storm like battle hymn. Car thief fired until pistol clicked empty, then stabbed with shard of glass he pulled from floor. The quiet one moved beside me, strikes precise, breathing steady, as if this chaos was meditation. We had slowed the tide, but we hadn't stopped it. For every corpse that fell, 3 pushed forward. The air was thick with rot, screams, gunpowder, and hopelessness. Then Alvarez's voice cut through it. He had crawled free of pile that dragged him down, half his face torn, arm hanging useless. But he still clutched badge in one hand, pistol in the other. He staggered toward us, eyes burning, spitting blood. "The law still stands," he rasped. "You're traitors. All of you." He raised pistol at me. Rookie screamed no, shoving him. The shot went wide, cracking ceiling. Kincaid roared, swinging stool into Alvarez's chest, bones crunching. Alvarez hit floor hard, pistol skittering away. He coughed blood, badge clutched tight, whispering law as breath left him. Then his eyes went still. Silence hit harder than gunshot. Rookie stared down, face pale, whispering we had killed our captain. The civilians at far end of hall screamed betrayal, pointing, shouting we had murdered leader. They pulled at doors, desperate to flee, but outside was worse. Shadows pressed against windows, pounding louder. They were trapped between storm and us. The quiet one bent, pried badge from Alvarez's dead fingers, then set it on table near wall. "The law is done," he said calmly. "Now comes judgment." His words turned everyone's eyes to me. Rookie's lips trembled, asking if this was right. Civilians shouted that arming prisoners doomed us. Kincaid grinned, blood slick, daring anyone to oppose. Car thief panted, muttering about survival above all. I felt weight of keys heavy in pocket. Not just metal, judgment itself. I spoke loud enough for all to hear. Law died when sirens fell. What matters now is survival. Those who fight live. Those who run die. Gasps filled hall. Some civilians cursed me. Some nodded through tears. Rookie shook, whispering this wasn't what he signed up for. His eyes begged me to say law still meant something. But it didn't. Not anymore. The pounding at barricades grew louder. Wood cracked, metal screamed. The dead were minutes away from flooding us again. I tossed keys to Kincaid. "Arm yourselves." Prisoners surged into evidence room, pulling shotguns, pistols, armor. Kincaid strapped riot shield to arm, eyes blazing. Car thief loaded pistol with shaking hands. The quiet one took shotgun, checked chamber, then looked back at me with nod of respect. Civilians cried betrayal, but their screams drowned under moans shaking walls. I barked order. "Anyone who wants to live, stand and fight. Anyone who won't, get behind us and pray." Rookie hesitated, eyes wet, hands trembling on broken baton. Then he stepped beside me, jaw tight. His voice cracked but steady. "Then I'll fight too." The barricade burst. They came like avalanche, bodies pouring through lobby, crawling over desks, crashing into walls. We met them head on. Kincaid roared, smashing shield into skulls, shotgun blasting holes in tide. Car thief fired wild, screaming, but every shot dropped one more. The quiet one moved like shadow, each blast precise, conserving shells. I swung pipe until arms felt like breaking, until every bone in hands cracked. Rookie screamed, bashing skulls with stick, face twisted in fear and fury. Civilians behind us shouted prayers, some grabbing weapons, some cowering. The corridor became furnace of death. Blood sprayed walls, teeth snapped inches from flesh, bodies piled waist high. But we held. Not because of law. Not because of badge. Because wolves had been loosed. Minutes stretched like hours. My vision blurred, ears ringing from endless gunfire. Kincaid's laughter turned to growl as bodies piled higher. Car thief wept as he fired, muttering he didn't want to die. The quiet one's voice rose calm over chaos. "Hold. Line. Hold." We pushed tide back foot by foot, until barricade of corpses slowed advance. For a moment the moans dulled, storm breaking against wall of its own dead. We breathed ragged, shoulders sagging, hands slick with blood. Rookie dropped to knees, gasping, eyes wide. Civilians sobbed in back, clutching each other. I stared at keys still warm in pocket. They had unlocked more than cells. They had unlocked truth. Law was gone. Judgment remained. And I had chosen wolves to guard the flock. The dead were still coming. The precinct was still doomed. But for first time since sirens faded, we weren't prey. We were predators standing at the gates. The storm returned before midnight. It never really ended, The pause was only the dead pressing against their own bodies piled in corridors, shoving, clawing, pulling each other down until there was space again to surge forward. When they rose, it sounded like the earth itself moaned. The barricades groaned back, ready to break. We stood in shadows of a fortress already lost. Kincaid strapped stolen riot armor over blood-soaked clothes, shotgun across his chest, riot shield scarred with teeth marks. He laughed low, promising to make them choke on his name. Car Thief shook so bad his pistol rattled, but he loaded another clip with clenched teeth. The Quiet One checked corners, calm as surgeon, every movement sharp. Rookie gripped bent baton like sword, lips whispering prayers that never reached his eyes. Civilians cowered behind us, pressed into cells we once used for criminals. Irony burned in my chest. I carried pipe dented from 100 skulls, badge heavy in pocket. It felt like stone dragging me down. Alvarez had died clinging to it, swearing law still mattered. Now it was nothing but memory. The barricade split. They came pouring in, arms thrashing, jaws snapping, shadows filling every inch of hall. The roar deafened. We answered with thunder. Kincaid's shotgun barked fire, shield smashing skulls into paste. Car Thief's pistol cracked wild, his screams joining the storm. The Quiet One fired calm, precise, every shot a measured word in language of death. Rookie swung broken baton until arms bled, shrieking fury. I fought at front with pipe, each strike shattering bone, spraying gore across walls. The tide pushed harder, stronger, endless. The hallway shook with every impact. Civilians screamed in back, begging us not to fall. We carved mountain of corpses, blood-soaking floor until boots slipped. But for every body that dropped, 10 more surged. The tide pressed closer, jaws snapping at faces, fingers clawing skin. Kincaid roared, shotgun empty, swinging shield until teeth cracked against steel. Car Thief fell, dragged down screaming, his pistol firing until silence took him. Rookie tried pulling him back, but hands closed on his arm. I ripped corpse off him, smashing skull into wall until bone broke. Rookie sobbed, rage-burning tears from his face. The Quiet One pulled us tighter, voice cutting through chaos. Hold line. Hold. His calm steadied us, gave rhythm to storm. Then roof cracked. Daniel's old perch gave way, bodies crashing from above. Dead spilled through ceiling like floodwater. Lobby became furnace of claws and teeth. Rookie screamed for retreat. Civilians shrieked behind us. Kincaid bellowed no, that there was no retreat, only war. He charged into tide, shield high, vanishing under wave. His laughter turned to roar, then to silence. The Quiet One caught my arm, eyes sharp. End it. Now. I knew what he meant. Basement held generator, fuel tanks stacked in cages, explosives from armory. Enough fire to wipe Precinct from map. Enough fire to end storm. Enough fire to end me. I pushed Rookie toward civilians. He fought me, screaming he wouldn't run. Tears streaked his blood-stained face. You're all I have left, he sobbed. I shoved him harder, voice breaking. Then live. That's an order. The Quiet One gripped my shoulder, nodding once, respect in his eyes. He turned back to storm, shotgun raised, vanishing into wave. I sprinted through back halls, dead swarming close behind. My boots slipped in blood, lungs burned with smoke. The basement roared with groans already breaching stairwell. I slammed doors, chained them shut, bodies pounding inches away. I knelt by generator, fuel canisters lined like graves. My hands shook as I wired charges, Alvarez's badge heavy in pocket. I pulled it free, stared at it under flickering light. Badge of law, badge of order, badge of ghosts. I pressed it into palm, closed fist around it. Moans thundered closer. Doors split. Claws reached through gaps. I hit detonator. Fire consumed world. The explosion shook earth, firestorm ripping through corridors, incinerating bodies, shattering walls. The dead screamed as flesh burned from bone. Glass shattered across city blocks, flames leaping skyward. The precinct, fortress, prison, tomb became inferno. In last second, heat-searing lungs, walls collapsing, I felt badge burn into palm. I smiled through fire. Not law. Not justice. Only sacrifice. Above ground, civilians stumbled into night, Rookie dragging them toward alleys. They turned as flames lit horizon, fire painting sky red. The moans faded. The storm of teeth silenced. Rookie dropped to knees, tears streaking his dirt-stained face. In his hand he held piece of badge I had pressed into his pocket before pushing him away. He clutched it tight, whispering my name, swearing oath to carry it forward. The city still burned. Hordes still roamed. But for one night, silence fell. The precinct was gone. The badge was gone. But in ashes, survival had been bought. And that was enough.